Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another version of Bill Rhoden On Sports here at MetLife Stadium, where the Jets took yet another bump on the chin. This time to Seattle, to the Seattle Seahawks. Here with my friend and co-host, the great Jamal Murphy.
Great to be here as usual.
And here, of course, with the production crew, Raisa Kelly on video, and Kevin Keating, who survived the clash with the Russell Wilson bodyguard clan, but he got a shot, so you'll see it. And here with a really special guest, man, a close friend, great journalist, great guy in general, great Thomas George. This is really cool, man. Thomas George is a national columnist for SB Nation, done that for about three years now. First of all, Thomas, it's an honor, as they say, and a pleasure to have you on Bill Rhoden On Sports, my brother. Thank you for being here.
I feel the same way, Bill. It's great to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. We're surviving. They're still paying us and shit. Getting these paychecks coming out.
Keep getting them checks. That's what they say.
Them checks, man. But actually, just really enjoying still what we do. Just a brief thing. I mean, Thomas, we first of all, we were colleagues at the New York Times. I was there for a while. I mean, I was there for a long time. But then Thomas.
We overlapped for 17 years.
Yeah, 17. Wow. That's unbelievable.
Over 17 years. 17
years, man. It's a lot. How many sports editors was that?
Oh, there's a few.
Yeah, let's see. Joe Vecchione for me. Oh, Vecchione hired you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. And then Lori Mifflin.
With her. Who else? Then
Neil Amder.
Neil Amder, good guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Neil was good.
Sensational.
I always remember he said, "Man, Thomas, because whenever the expense reports would roll in, it's like, wow, man, really, Thomas, give us a break." With me, it's like, where are they? It's like, well, Thomas, damn, here they are. Hey, brother, we got to cover the news, man. We just can't cover anyway.
Well, they're sending me around the nation. It costs to go around the nation. I wasn't going over the Hudson.
Tom, you came to the Times from the Detroit Free Press, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, and but you've also been with the Denver Post, AOL, NFL.com, the NFL Magazine, and you were the NFL Network's first managing editor. And you're getting ready to come up with your third book and your first NFL Center book in the fall of 2017. What is that? What's that book going to be?
It's going to be a book centered on the making of quarterbacks.
Oh, wow.
I think it's going to be a fascinating piece study
that's
across
great.
the board.
Well, because I think we once collaborated on something when you were at it was a documentary about the quarterbacks, right? About black quarterbacks.
Absolutely, yeah. And we did that at the network as well. A huge historical piece, and got a chance to talk to some of the guys before they passed, who were really a big part of that as well. And the not only the quarterback situation, but the integration of the league situation. And so, yeah.
So what is this book going to be? This book is going to be about just the position itself.
A historical perspective as well as a current one.
It's the physical and mental, I assume?
I think the whole gamut of it, family, background, teaching, philosophy, why Carson Wentz isn't good enough to play for the Cleveland Browns, but yet is for the Eagles.
Okay.
All across the board.
Because you just can't. You came up here, but you would spend some time with Russell Wilson.
I did.
Who I find to be maybe one of the. I think Russell Wilson may be one of the most fascinating people in the league. Tom Brady is fascinating because he just wins and all that, but he loses points because this whole thing with Trump. But Russell he's just a very fascinating guy. His family background. Do you find him very fascinating?
I have to say I do, and I find it fascinating to watch the way he plays and the reactions he gets. Going into this game, there was some local commentary, and it was very strong about how of course, the Jets have the advantage here because Russell Wilson isn't 100%, and he's only a guy who can make it happen on the edges and on the move. He's not a pocket passer. Let's not kid ourselves. This was the thought. This was the rhetoric.
Right.
And certainly the guy goes out here and throwing from the pocket all day long and just slicing them to pieces. I found it really, but the complete package of who he is and how he conducts himself is really, truly worth examination. And it's a model for any young quarterback because he almost handles himself as a CEO of an organization. And I'm sure Pete Carroll has had a lot to do with the molding of him in that way. But I just saw him in the game complete passes to 9 different receivers. And then I just saw him downstairs once all of his press conferences were done, which he handled beautifully, and is sharing with his teammates. I just saw him with his family, and there was at least 20 of them there, uncles and aunts and cousins, his wife, and all. He took time for every single one of the people in that party, took pictures with every single member. Nobody in that group left without feeling wanted or feeling some attention from him.
Yep. I was a witness to that.
And you saw it,
Yep.
Jamal.
Yep.
And so I'm like, wow, the patience that it takes to play quarterback on the field is one thing, and then all of the dynamics of patience that are required off the field as well are the kinds of things, the lack of that type of patience and the lack of that type of understanding are the things that get quarterbacks in trouble.
Right.
You know, and so he is winning off the field as well as he's winning on the field. A lot of it has to do with the makeup and the understanding I think he has of what it takes.
What are you going to do with him in terms of your book? Clearly he's going to be a big part of your book. Are you interviewing it? Were you interviewing it, or this was for SB Nation, or what was?
Today I did a combination of both. He'll definitely be a part of my column for tomorrow with SB Nation, but certainly in this book as we move forward, and by the time the book is published, he will possibly have won his second Super Bowl.
Wow.
So that a lot of it depends on what happens,
right.
you know.
And you obviously think that's very possible.
Well, not only do I think it's possible, they think it's possible,
Right.
and I think that's the key. I just visited with Earl Thomas down there, and he said something to me that lingered. He was saying that there's a feeling with this team, and Pete Carroll said it to me also before it came up. There's a feeling with this team. We just had more joy, he said, in our locker room after this victory than we've had in a long time. He said, and I think part of it comes from the fact that we started out slow offensively, but now they see what's capable with us offensively, and now we're starting to click. And if we get our offense right, the defense is going to be right.
Right.
That's what their feeling is. And so they're really excited about where they are at 3-1
Right.
with a bye,
Right.
with 2 weeks to get him even more healthy. So there's a good karma going on there. There's a good feeling going on there. And here was the key thing that Earl Thomas said about all of that is I was like, wow, I definitely feel the spirit that's here. And he goes, man, it's like old times.
Exactly.
And old times for them was back-to-back Super Bowls.
That's
you
right.
know?
Right, and they started off rough last year. What were they after the first 4 games? That was like 1-3, maybe
Yeah,
something like that.
it was bad.
So they were struggling. They still made the playoffs, right? Or
They did.
They made the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
But to start out now 3-1, and obviously they're not where they're going to be. Nobody is yet, but they must have that confidence going forward. Like this could be it.
I think you're right, Jamal, because they know they can play in November and December and January. So if they ever get like a fast start like this, then it really bodes well for them for the future.
And Jimmy Graham, to me, has been big because when they first got Jimmy Graham, I was excited for Seattle. I thought that Russell Wilson and Jimmy Graham that could create big things, but it never materialized last year, and not even the first couple games this year. And then last week he had a good game, and then to build on it this week, they could be scary.
It really could. And I always got the feeling that there was something wrong in the connection and in the communication there. I almost got the feeling that the Seattle players who've sort of built this sort of family nuts and bolts, really close bond, sort of viewed him as an outsider, even though he was part of the team. I don't think they really embraced him fully, and maybe part of that was because he didn't make himself available in a way to be embraced. But now we're 2 years into this thing with him, and now I think some of that has shifted and worked itself out, and he's healthy. He has been banged up a lot, but he's healthy now.
Right.
And so I guarantee you that I got the feeling again that there's a chemistry there that is clicking all across the board with this team. But but also if Jimmy Graham is not only going to be healthy, but also be involved and also be accepted, and then go make the catches that he made today,
Today.
Right.
You know,
then that's it.
now, leave it to the Jets. Your Jets, Jamal and Kevin Keating over here. Leave it to the Jets to get people healthy. You know, there's certain teams that's basically their role. That's basically their role in life, is to basically be Dr. Feelgoods for the other team. And so, you know, the Jets obliged, and here comes Seattle kind of on the roll, and the Jets made them feel tremendous about the. You know, I was talking to Raisa Kelly. We were in the Jets locker room, and it was kind of like this. Then we go into the Seattle locker room, and the firecrackers and the hip hop and the blah blah. It was like the celebratory music. But you know, it's funny. I wanted to get back to Russell, because I think it's really important to get back to that. And it's so interesting, the doubts. I mean, now here's a guy who came within one throw of winning 2 Super Bowls and you know that if this guy was like a white guy, you know, and had done that in a short period of time, he'd be running for office now. He'd be either on somebody's ticket. He'd either be on Hillary's ticket or Trump's ticket, whatever.
Right.
There'd be stadiums and all. But now here he is, 5 years into the thing, and there's this kind of nonsense. The Jets of all people.
Yeah.
You know, there's still this kind of doubt and this kind of, and I always, you know, Thomas, we always talk about this. I always see this almost sort of symbolic of what a lot of black folks have to go through in the corporations. No matter how good you are, no matter how well or how much, there's always, but I don't know, is it kind of, let's one more
Right. Can he
thing.
do this or can he
but
do that? But there's a reason for what he's doing, and da, da, da.
And I mean, and Russell came into the league. Man, this guy came into the league as a winner.
Right.
To me, I mean, I know Pete Carroll probably had something to do with it, but this dude came in winning ball, you know, just as a winner.
And it's almost like people want to use his strengths as a weakness,
Right.
because if you watch football and know anything about football and the quarterback position, he's always been able to throw from the pocket. You're not successful in the league. You definitely don't win a Super Bowl without being able to throw from the pocket.
Right.
And it's just because he has the ability to run, to get out of the pocket, to run and slide. He's also the smartest quarterback runner I've ever seen in terms of knowing exactly when to
And
get
he knows,
down.
right.
Doesn't take hits.
No,
that
he
often.
does not take the big hits.
But it's almost like because he can do something extra, all of a sudden now there's questions about whether he can, pass from the pocket, which is crazy.
I mean, it's really insane. But I'm so happy for him, and I guess I saw the depth of his roots. My internist is a guy like Dr. Tom Price. All right, Tom Price, who played at Dartmouth, and he was a captain of the Dartmouth team. And I think went undefeated. And just once during an examination, he said, "Yeah, well, you ought to talk to Russell Wilson's uncle, who was a teammate of mine." I said, "Well, he's an attorney down in D.C." I said, "Oh, wow, really?" And so I met him. He was a great guy, and he also played at Dartmouth, as did Russell's dad. And Tom knew all these guys. He knew each one of them. And then, of course, we talked about their father, who was a president. He coached at Jackson State, and then he was a president at Norfolk State. So I'm at HBCU. So I said, man, this guy, his roots in blackness and the whole thing go real deep. Because you know how we get sometimes, well, is he really, a brother? No, this guy's a brother. Now, whether he chooses to, raise his fist in the air or whatever, but I think he's a very solid guy. He's a very solid guy.
He is, and he's a work in progress. I like the fact that he understands that he doesn't know it all, not only as a quarterback but as a young man, and he looks like he is continually growing. I definitely see some of the hesitancy to embrace him. I definitely see some of the racist ideas that go along with him. I know that he's seen it and felt it. I know that there was a lot of conversation, again, this week about him not being a pocket passer. Therefore, the Jets had the advantage. And I kind of got the feeling from the way he played that he was aware, because he does have a great deal of self-awareness and natural awareness. I almost got the feeling that he and Darrell Bevel, the offensive coordinator, were aware of some of the conversation that was going on, and they made it a point to make a few points today, and I really thought they did that with an exclamation point.
How do you feel as far as his own team, the Seahawks? How do they embrace Russell Wilson? What's the relationship he has with his teammates?
From what I've seen, they have come to know each other and appreciate each other. I think when he first walked through the door, there were a group of people in the room who didn't come from the same background, who didn't have the same exposures that you were talking about, Bill. And I think they kind of were a little reluctant in really getting to know him and certainly in embracing him. But Russell has an infectious way of the more you're around him, the more you can't help but like him. You know what I'm saying? Because there is a genuine nature there. I ask him, and so I think that's where we are in that locker room. I think all of them understand, accept, and embrace him from what I've seen in that locker room. I ask him about the question, the thought that we started out with here, from my perspective, was he threw the ball to 9 different receivers with a great deal of touch and resiliency, and then he had more than 20 family members who he spread himself around, you know, in the most gracious manner that one could possibly do. And when I asked him about it and said basically those words, and how is that possible, he said, well, that's my family, man. That's just love, man. You know, I don't have to work at in my family. Well, we know that some people do have to work. You know what I'm saying? So you know, but so I don't think it's just that. I think it's his approach, and I think it's an appreciative approach in his circle.
And also 309 yards passing and 3 TDs will help out too.
That's right. That's right. And Mary and Mary Rihanna.
Sierra.
Sierra. I'm sorry.
Close.
Rihanna. Sierra.
Yeah. You know,
Sierra, yeah, she was
Sorry.
there.
Yeah, it's good. You know, that's you know.
Sorry about that. What?
I think I counted 11 goodbye kisses. It was from Sierra. Goodbye, and then it was,
I saw 3.
And then bye.
It was a beautiful thing.
Oh, it was it was at least 11.
And if you look at 11,
That's a lot of love.
And if you look at Kevin Keating, got a nice shot, right? That you'll probably see somewhere. That was really good. Listen, man, let's we'll spend like 5 seconds on the Jets, just because you know we have a lot of Jets fans, or diminishing by the second, I'm sure. What's wrong? I mean, you know, I like Todd Bowles. I'm always pulling for brothers to succeed. Not that I'm not pulling for anybody else to succeed, but you know, you study history of the United States. You know that whatever we do, whether it's somebody the CEO of American Express, it's always hard for us to make it. So whether it's Dean Baquet, the New York Times, the Times, or whatever, I'm pulling for black people to make it because it's just hard, man. It's twice as hard. Having said that, you know, Todd's in a tough spot, man. I mean, he's like 1-3, and you know, Todd, you know, he's a very basic guy. I mean, he doesn't, you know, give you a big show in the press room. I mean, he kind of is just there and very matter of fact. I'm just concerned, you know, that this ship got to be righted pretty soon.
I've been concerned for a while, and I tell you, there's concern for the present, there's concern for the future. They're going to have to do something dramatic, something spectacular to change the course of the season, because I don't know how many people, if any, are going to choose them to win at Pittsburgh and win at Arizona. And there's the next 2 games. So it's not only 1-3, but they really, really are staring at 1-5 unless they do something dramatic.
Like change quarterbacks, maybe.
Hey, but
Geno. I mean, listen, Geno can do this.
Yeah.
He can do what Ryan Fitzpatrick's doing. He could do that, right? He can do this.
Spectacularly.
He could. Geno could do that. He's proven it.
Yeah.
He could do that, and at least he could escape. And, you know.
I didn't like the whole situation with Geno with him punched in the jaw and the whole way that was handled. I didn't like Todd's dealings with that. It set off alarm bells for me in what is he running, what type of ship he's running. There are certain coaches that no matter what happens, that's not happening, because the coach has set an edict from top down. This is the way we conduct business. This is the way we are. I think that there are coaches across this league, started with Bill Belichick, where that player, Ike, who did the punch, would have thought twice and knew. This is, hey, I'm not doing this because I know I do this. Not only do I lose my job, but I may even get another one once Belichick starts talking to other people about me. But what was going on in that situation there where this guy is comfortable enough to do something like that? Well, what it tells me is what's going on is that Todd Bowles has created an environment. He has created a situation where that could happen. And so when you look at that, and then you look at the game in Buffalo, a great job of turning his franchise around, and you're at Buffalo with a chance to win, playing against the coach who you replaced. It's a game you have to win. And the way they played there, I don't know if the connectors all the way through with what his program is and what he's preaching, and begin top down what he's building is all meshing. It may take time, and it may take more time, and usually it does. Right. But there's some signs here and some alarm bells here that, again, with certain coaches, you're not going to get all of the time that you may need.
I mean, but with all due respect to my former colleague, it does take time. I mean, remember, Belichick got fired at Cleveland, so he wasn't the whole. He got fired at Cleveland. I think sometimes, and you've been around for a long time. Sometimes it just takes time. Now, maybe the larger question is, no matter how much time, do you have the personality? Do you have the? It's not at this level. It's not X's and O's. Everybody knows the same, pretty much X's and O's. It's this other stuff. Do you have all your players? Are they your guys? Are they, system guys? And I'm looking at this team, and I'm looking at the quarterback. And you're right, and it just could be a huge problem because there may not be an answer on the roster, And even with the Jets, man, it's like why do some teams always find the right person, and some teams never find the right people, So I don't know. I just hope that just for Sophie's sake, to have some excitement in this market, that he turns us around. But I'm like looking at this team, and it doesn't seem like they're playing with inspiration. But again, it's only 4 games, and they could end up to be 12-4.
Yeah, there's a chance.
Right?
I mean, I definitely don't see them winning at Pittsburgh, although that could happen. But maybe because he came from Arizona, he knows a lot of that personnel, and he's going back there, that maybe they have a chance, to do something in Arizona, and maybe that's where something good happens for them. But he is in New York.
Right.
He is, on Broadway, and there are certain things that are expected to happen here, more so than in other places.
Except you're with a franchise that hadn't won a championship in since 1969. So.
Right. Yeah, but you're with an owner that doesn't have the patience that some of these other teams, Jets in history, may have had.
And it's New York City, and I totally agree with you going back to last year. And you have one game. I'm a Jet fan. I mean, you have one game to get in the playoffs, and you're playing your old coach,
right?
And you don't show up for that game, and then you come back and you're 1-3 this year, and this probably doesn't mean anything, but very soft-spoken guy.
Very.
I think when people look at him from the outside in, they're like, oh, it doesn't seem like he has that coach mentality.
Fine.
And then if you don't win, that's just going to further that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Belief. Because
you're right. Because Rex Ryan BS people for a number of years.
He did.
Right.
Just because he had the the whole Reverend Ike, kind of thing, and he did have he came in a good situation, for the first couple of years, but then after a while, it's kind of where it's thin, so. We'll see. I hope it happens. Listen, Tommy.
Well, wait a minute now. You're the one who said when we first got started, I don't even think we were on air yet, but you're dead right. And that was, hey, win, and at least if you're not going to win, entertain us.
Give us a show.
That's New York. Give us a show. Yeah, that's that.
That's I wanted, but you brought it up. I mean, if either way, you got to give us. If you're losing, I'm looking at Herm Edwards or we just talked Rex Ryan. Okay, you get an extra year because you're just so damn entertaining.
Right.
And Herm, man, just got to get the game. People can't wait to show them. What's Herm going to say now? And the same thing with Ryan, man, for like first 3 years, man. What's this guy, taking on Bill Belichick and all that. So it is a shtick and all that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it gets to the point of, man, you ain't won no games.
Right.
So, but you can't just be, kind of vanilla and not give us a show and then lose. I mean, you got to have one way or the other.
Right. You can't be Belichick without winning.
Yeah, no. Trust me, as he found out in Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Said you got to give us. And so Belichick, I think he realized after he got fired in Cleveland, he said this will never happen again. Mm-hmm. By hook or crook, as we know now. Mm-hmm. Crook.
Yep.
Said this will not happen again. If I go down, I'm going to go down guns blazing.
Right. Well, here's another problem for him now, and it is a very central problem, and that is that he is a defensive whiz. He comes to the Jets being a man known for being able to put together a game plan, execute a defense, and have a top 5 defense. Well, his defense got torched out there today.
Right.
I mean, they're throwing the ball left, right, center. Russell, as you mentioned, 309 yards, 3 touchdowns. Where are the turnovers on the defense? Where's the fumbles that are picked up and ran back for 70 yards for a touchdown? Where is the strength? Why isn't the strength the thing that he does the best? Why isn't that the focal point of what this team is? And that's always a problem when you hire a guy and he has a staple and the staple doesn't show up.
That's right. Since we're talking about Bowles, I was down in the locker room, in the somber Jets locker room, and let's play a couple of sound clips about what Todd said. First, the first one they said, just generally, Todd, I mean, what do you think? 1-3, this looks kind of bleak. And this is what he said about that.
Sometimes you got to fight more than one battle to win a war. We fought 2 battles 2 weeks in a row and we lost. But the season's not over. It's 1-3. But we got to grind. We got to get better. And we're going to do that next week. We got to get better.
And then after that, they asked him, the big question of what about the quarterback? Because clearly that's the segment. And, he said, what he said, you'll hear, it wasn't a ringing endorsement. But this is what he said about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He started out playing decent. Obviously, the 2 picks at the end, one should have been caught, that was dropped, and the other one is just trying to make a play. But he played better than he played last week.
And finally, after that, they asked, well, people are starting to talk. So
we got the question.
I'm
surprised they didn't start with that.
No. Well, kind of, again, it's okay. He's a good guy. That's the good guy.
Right.
The
Soften
good
him
guy
up. Soften him up a little.
Yeah. I did finally ask him, well, people are starting to talk. And this is what he said about that.
I don't worry about what people say. He knows he can't have turnovers. Some of them are unfortunate and not the quarterback's fault. Nevertheless, the quarterback runs the offense, so he can't have the turnovers, but we got to get better there.
Hey, Tom, but listen, in just the last couple of minutes that we got you here, man, there's been so much happening in this league, man. I mean, it has nothing to do with football. Clearly, there's Colin Kaepernick. I'm just wondering what you think about that. I mean, you and I talk about this kind of stuff over the decades, just about black stuff and black folks and protests. What do you make of Colin Kaepernick and I guess the movement that created? Just what are some
I'm
of the
excited and I'm happy that we're even having the conversation now. For so long in this league, it was very much a Michael Jordan type effect. Hands off, back up. We're the #1 league. This is football. Don't do anything to distract the other 53. Stay regimented. And you didn't have players in numbers taking a stance for pretty much anything other than their contracts.
Right.
And other than, their attempts to win Super Bowls. So there's been a question for a long time, and Jim Brown has led that question for some time. When are some of these young, particularly African-American men, but really all the players in the NFL, when they're going to start to have a level of activism, when they're going to start to have a level of involvement, and when they're going to stop being so self-centered and safe and stand up for justice and what's right? And you have to really give Colin Kaepernick a great deal of credit. I think history will show that he will stand right along with Carlos and Ali and many others who took a controversial road on the way to a critical road of enlightenment. So I don't think there can be enough involvement by these players. I don't think there can be enough statements. And I think we're really just at the cusp of it, Bill. I think it's going to, because it's affected young men in college and it's affected young men in high school, and they're all sort of beginning to pay attention a little more and be a little more aware, and that's a great thing.
And what I like about it, Thomas, is that what they're finding out is that, wait a minute, man, they can't fire all of us. that we are the league.
Right,
and
we are the league.
You can't have it both ways. And it's almost like this kind of the light goes off. So wait a minute. We're like 69% of the league, 70% of the NBA. What are they going to do?
Absolutely.
They're going to fire all of us. They want to win, and they don't want to be in a position where they think that they're taking one guy and flogging him, taking him out in the middle of the yard and flogging him. So please don't do that.
Right.
So it's almost like there's this self-reason where the light bulb is, wait a minute. We are the league. You guys aren't going to what are you going to do?
Yeah, there's power in numbers. We do know that. But also, That's why I give Colin Kaepernick so much credit, because when he started, there wasn't numbers. There was one.
Right.
And it takes that one to do that. And I've heard people say, you touched on a great thing there, Bill, about the group dynamic and about what are they going to do, and to me, meaning the league and ownership. I talked to some people who said, well, it's Jed York in San Francisco. This is partly his fault. He should have stood up and put his foot down and said, not with my franchise and not with my team, and you can't do this. I really believe that if Jed York had done that, with the teammates and with the people around him
and in the
in
Bay
that
Area,
locker room, absolutely, there was no way that would have gone off without being even as explosive as the statement that Kaepernick was making.
And another part of it is the fans, right? Because the fans of the NFL will have made their voices heard in terms of, a lot, it seems at least the loudest voices you hear are the ones that say, shut up and play. We don't want to hear you at all. And obviously that played a role into why a lot of people didn't come out in previous years, since the Jordan era you brought up. Right. The fans played a big role, and it's just a great thing now that the players, it started with one who said, I don't care what kind of backlash I'm going to get on Twitter or social media or when I go out, I'm going to speak my mind. And I even asked Doug Baldwin today, how he felt about fans who say, just shut up and play, and this is what he said.
I have a good comeback for it, but it's not a humble comeback, so I don't want to say it. But you're right. I am going to stick to football, but I'm also going to continue to speak out. So they just have to suck it up and deal with it.
So obviously, like you said, he's not going to stop talking, and I thank him for that, because this is what we need, as you said.
Right, and even for us as writers, particularly as black writers, I mean, every time you walk through this press box, you just see how we need a civil rights movement in the press box. I think sports journalism may be one of the regressive areas, pillars of not only journalism, but one of the institutions in the world, just how segregated this press box is. And I think that when you put these issues out there, and people start getting nervous because, now we can start talking about this stuff. It ain't just in sports.
Absolutely.
It's across the board. I mean, in every single institution that it could be the brothers and sisters who are on Wall Street in these big firms. It could be in a law firm. Jamal, you're a lawyer. I mean, it's every single institution where black folks are, where this whole little racist thing over the last 400 years, it just continues to infect people. So when you've got this major institution of sports and a young brother comes up and says, hey, this stuff ain't right, it has nothing to do with football. Now, there are two issues. Now I think, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it will be good to look at, if I don't know who his apparel company is, but I think Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, these have been getting a pass. Because if you now turn inside, well, wait a minute, how many black folks do you have on your boards? How much business do you guys do with black vendors? I don't know, So I think that if now everybody, whether it's basketball, football, now you look inside your own institution.
That's a great place.
Your teams, your leagues, the vendors said, hey, let's this all starts at home.
Absolutely.
Now I think people kind of start getting on the hot seat.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the next level of sophisticated approaches. I mean, we're going to change the economics here, because this is the one area where you guys are, okay, don't give me a bunch of shoes, Under Armour equipment. How do you do business with black vendors? How many black folks do you got on board? So I think this you lift that rock up and you see a whole lot of little termites. So I think it's a real good thing.
I totally agree with you, Bill. There's nothing that can be added to that, because that's the crux of the whole situation. When you start talking about the dollars and you start talking about opportunity, really that's the root of all of it.
Mm-hmm. Listen, our guest has been the great Thomas George. He's a national columnist for SB Nation. Beyond that, he's been a great friend, wonderful colleague. We shared a lot of stories at the New York Times. Now we're both on to bigger and better things. People say, well, how could it be bigger and better? Oh, trust me, it can be.
It can be.
Although not to diminish anything,
right.
you know. But anyway, it's Thomas, man. Thank you so much. God bless you, your family. How are your kids, by the way? You have
Fantastic. My oldest son Anthony is 17 and at the Dwight Englewood Academy and playing left tackle and defensive end.
Oh, wow.
While at the same time soaring academically and just on the debate team and ethics team and just a model student and a model ambassador for that school. Very proud of him.
So you don't mind him playing football?
I don't mind him playing. As a matter of fact, I want him to play because I want him to be engaged, and I don't want him to live his life in fear. I want him to learn proper technique and go out there and play this game because there is a safe way to play it. My youngest son also plays. He's 14. He's at Fort Lee High School. He's the only ninth grader on the varsity football team.
Oh, wow.
So he's backup running back. He's on the kick teams. He plays receiver, corner. He's on his way as well. That's Eli. So they're all well. My wife Tamara, everybody really blessed, man.
That's great, man. And you're from Paducah, Kentucky, but you were a hell of a baseball player. I mean, I didn't realize that was one of your passions was baseball.
That is true, and still remains. I don't get the chance to see it or write about it as much as I would like, but I'm looking forward to the playoffs and the World Series, and the Mets are in it again.
They're in it. Clinched yesterday.
Right. Now, we didn't. I do want to let you go, but just so you're a national columnist with SB Nation, but you do everything. Right?
I do. My focus is the NFL. I spent most of my career, of course, with the NFL, so I tend to live and reside in that arena for about 80% of my work, and then the other 20% will be spent on baseball, basketball, track, other stories that are of import.
Hey, listen, Thomas George, thank you very much, man. We look forward to having you back, and we will be back. We're going to take a little brief break, and then we'll be back with Steve Serby. This is like Legends time here. We'll be right back in a couple seconds.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another scintillating episode of Bill Rhoden on Sports here at MetLife Stadium, where once again the Jets have taken it on the chin. Steve Serby is here. Well, I'm going to save the introduction because but I'm here with of course our regular crew here: Kevin Keating doing the soundboard, and Raisa Kelly on camera, and of course my friend and my co-host, great Jamal Murphy, still holding it down here.
Holding it down.
Yeah, and. Now, this is quite exciting. I'm going to, our guest today is, somebody I've known for like years. Probably, let's see, I was at the Times for almost 35 years. And I guess we've been kind of knowing each other ever since then. But so my guest is the legendary Steve Serby, who is a columnist at the New York Post. And somebody, I think Steve may be one of the most intriguing people on the beat. Because you see Steve everywhere, every sport, every event, and this is going to really be the first time Steve and I, without like there being beer around or something.
Keep the compliments coming.
$1, Steve? That's not enough. Yeah, but no, seriously, Steve Serby has been one of the most intriguing, and it's clearly one of the most versatile people that I've been around. Really, truly, one of the most versatile journalists I've been around. College basketball, college football. I think we did high school before. The Knicks.
I saw him at the Islanders.
Yeah,
hockey.
Did a little Islanders.
Yeah, I draw the line there.
Boxing. Did a little boxing.
Boxing. So a formal introduction. My guest is a great Steve Serby. Steve, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, I'll be on every week if you'll give me that kind of introduction.
No.
Oh, thanks, Bill.
Yeah, no, that's it. Man, but thanks so much, man. And how long have you been covering the Jets?
Well, I started covering the Jets for the New York Post in 1977. That was my beat from 77 to 82, before you were born. And then I started covering the NFL from 83.
But you started at the Post in 1972.
In 72, that's correct.
Right. Was that your first job?
My first job out of Ohio University.
Oh, you went to
Ohio
Ohio
went from
University?
the Ohio University Post to the New York Post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you went to Ohio, but where were you born?
I was born in Long Island.
Oh, okay.
North Massapequa, Long Island.
All right. So how did you get from there to Ohio University?
They
Besides flying, I know you.
a fellow that graduated a year before I did went there, and he told me it was a good journalism school, and that was my interest. So that's where I went, Athens, Ohio.
Yes. I know. I know, but I didn't know. For some reason, I was thinking that maybe you went to school around here, like either NYU or something like that.
No, no school around here would let me in. I had to go out of state.
Oh, that's great. So you knew then in high school that you wanted to get in this racket.
Yeah, I did. Of course, back in 1972, as you
Right.
well know, the industry was a lot different than it is now. I wouldn't recommend going to journalism, unfortunately, into
Really?
newspapers now. It was a lot different, but there were so many more newspapers back then than there are now. But I took creative writing in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I love writing. I grew to love writing. I loved sports. So I said, I put it together. Let's see, sports. I love sports. I love writing. Let me be a sports writer.
Tough. Very tough.
Tough job.
And here I am, 75 years later.
I know. And but you started in '72 at the Post, but then there was a little thing right when you left the Post and you switched to the arch rival Daily News.
Well, unfortunately at that time, I thought my worst fear was that the Post was going to go under.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it didn't. I went to the Daily News for 16 months, and then when Rupert Murdoch regained control of the Post, the sports editor who he rehired hired me back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been back ever since 1994.
Wow. What was it like? I'm just curious, when you went to the dark side, what was that like being at the Daily News?
It was different. I was no longer covering football. I was covering the Mets. I covered the 93 Mets, who lost 103 games.
Wow.
This team was
Forgot about
worse
that.
than the worst team money could buy. Jeff Torborg was the manager.
My God, I remember.
He was fired in May.
remember
Fired in May. And Dallas Green basically was the best quote on the team.
That's
He was
right.
the saving grace. Well, and then in the bottom of the ninth inning in Miami, in the last game of the year, bottom of the ninth inning, rain delay. Story of my life.
You know, I mentioned this before. So we've covered a lot of stuff together. But one of the famous pictures was a picture of you. It was 1981, right? Richard Todd. And I guess, I don't know what happened, but there's a picture of him like you got into it or something, but he was like either strangling you or trying to strangle you. But I always remember that picture. You just, for all the people who are like not bored yet, but I mean, I'm like that. I mean, that's when Serby officially became like my hero. This guy, I mean, because most of your athletes were kind of like not, you know, they were kind of like not like you or say something. But I mean, this guy was so pissed. I mean, what happened?
You know, you told me you wouldn't bring that up.
Well, I'm taking a page out of the New York Post.
We had to get you on somehow.
As told to
All right.
BROSpod.
Well, here's the whole story.
Yeah, tell us.
As
I've
told
never-
to
I've-
Rhoden On Sports.
I've never heard the whole story.
Okay, all right. It was November 4th, 1981, I believe was the date, a Wednesday before a game. I had written a column about Richard Todd, and the headline of the column was, "With Todd at helm, Jets will never win Super Bowl." And sometimes I blame the headline writers, but not this time.
Right.
And you turned out to be right.
Yeah. Well, I was right. But the quarterback I favored at that time was Matt Robinson. I thought he had more charisma, didn't have the arm or the physical tools that Todd did, but he got New York. Todd never got New York. He was overwhelmed. Todd was the guy that replaced Joe Namath.
He's from Alabama.
From the right. So New York was the worst possible place for Richard Todd to start his NFL career. So Todd was upset. He was angry at me, and I knew it. And I avoided him for a little while after that article. And then one day, myself and Ed Engels from CBS Radio,
Yeah.
who Todd was also angry with, we decided we would try to patch things up with Todd. So we got into this confrontation. Todd and he started cursing at me. I probably cursed back at him and told him not to tell me how to act, or he told me, "Don't tell me how to act." He said that to me, and I said, "I'm not telling you how to act." And I had a notebook at my side. That was pre-tape recorder.
Right. Oh man, that's right.
So I'm standing in the middle of the locker room, and Todd's looking at me, and I have this terrible feeling that he's about to attack me. And my feeling was absolutely right. He charged towards me.
In the locker? No.
In the locker. Yeah. Most of the Jets were already out at practice. He grabbed my throat with his right hand, pushed my head back into a locker.
Oh, my God.
And I slumped to the bottom of the locker. And then he ran out. And I remember I must have blacked out for a few minutes. I remember looking up and seeing Mark Gastineau there, which is scary in itself.
Anytime Gastineau comes to the rescue, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, where was he when I needed him? And he said to me, I remember him saying to me, your nose looks broken. You better get to a hospital.
Oh, wow.
Well, my nose wasn't broken, but I was really shaken up. And I was transported to the East Meadow, whatever they call it, the local hospital by Larry Weissman.
Oh, man.
Larry Weissman. And what happened in there was they examined me. They decided I didn't need to stay overnight, but they knew I was shaken up. But I ran into this whack job of a lady roaming the halls, and I asked her for a Band-Aid for a scratch on my nose. She gave me the Band-Aid, and our photographer, Bob Olin, snapped a picture of me with the Band-Aid. And the next day I wake up, and there's a huge picture of me on the back page of the Post wearing this Band-Aid. And the headline was a classic New York Post headline. Todd assaults our man.
Wow.
But what was frightful about that was for the next 2 weeks, I got crank calls. I had somebody slit a tire in my parking spot.
Wow.
At the Jets facility?
At the Jets facility. No, I'm sorry, at my home in Bayside.
Oh, wow.
In my outdoor park. And I remember going to the hardware store, and I bought this metal object that I would carry around with me because I lived in fear at that time. but ironically, that Sunday, the office took me. My office decided I would not cover for a little while, not cover the beat. So I stayed home, watched the Jets versus the Baltimore Colts, and as my luck would have it, Richard Todd had the game of his life. Now, if Todd would have thrown 4 picks,
right,
he would have been the villain, and I would have been maybe a hero.
Right.
But he threw like 4 touchdown passes, and I'm watching the game, and Bob Costas is debating my tiff with Todd because the game was a blowout. So they had to fill time.
Right.
So they spent most of the second half. Trumpy took Todd's side, Trumpy being a former player, and Costas took my side. You don't lay your hands on a writer,
right,
on a reporter. And the Jets at that time, Mike Kensel was the president.
Right.
Walt Michaels was the head coach.
Who was the PR?
Frank Ramos.
Frank Ramos.
But Kensel painted a picture where I was the provocateur. And make a long story short, it's impossible. It's too late for that. But I was interviewed by NFL security, and Todd was, I think, eventually fined something like $1,500, which back then, in 1981,
They did something.
yeah.
They did something.
But, yeah, that was it. And then it was...
And what was your relationship with him after that?
we shook hands. I don't think he ever apologized from what I remember. We shook hands, and a year later, everything was fine, and he threw the 5 picks in the mud bowl. But then I remember him calling me afterwards I over the phone, and I guess he talked about it. And then he came back to the Jets years later after they traded him to the Saints. And we were fine, but apparently something I must have written between then and now bothered him because he won't take my phone calls now.
Why would you want to call it?
Well, I mean, if I want to talk about Jets history or whatnot, but he, I must have called him a bust one too many times.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You had to write a column tonight or today.
Right. I blamed it on Richard Todd.
Okay. Is Fitzpatrick coming after you next week?
No. It's too early. Look, he's not playing well, but that's been the story of his career. I mean,
not playing well,
and then bouncing back. I did write. he's got 10 picks now, four touchdowns, 10 picks, but his teammates believe in him. They don't believe in Geno Smith. They trust Fitzpatrick. They don't trust Geno Smith. He's the quarterback. Todd Bowles stands behind him. Brandon Marshall stands behind him. It just, for Jets fans, though, you have to wonder, they're going to be up in arms. They're so desperate to find a franchise quarterback. You have to feel for them. This is a franchise that has not had a franchise quarterback since Namath left.
Exactly. So how long? You're talking about Todd Bowles. So how long before he's on the hot seat? Thomas George was here before, and we were talking about if you're a losing coach in New York, you got to give people a show. I mean, you can't be dull and lose. I mean, like Herm Edwards gave us a show, Rex Ryan gave us a show. How long? And Todd is a good guy. I think he's a good guy.
Oh, great guy.
He's not necessarily I mean,
no, he's not. Very few NFL coaches are
right.
Mr. Personality. Let's
right.
face it.
Right.
And we're all, the writers are going through culture shock after Rex Ryan.
Right. So how long before he starts feeling some heat?
Well, if they have a disaster of a season and the wheels fall off, then he'll be in trouble because that's the way of life in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Woody Johnson wants results, but I think it would take them really just falling to pieces because he and Mike Maccagnan are joined at the hip.
Right.
And I don't. Maccagnan doesn't seem to me to be a guy who makes snap judgments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it would take more than just not making the playoffs. Or
Yeah,
have another
I
7
believe
9,
so.
8 season.
I believe so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I could be wrong, but
Right.
that's the way I see it.
Right. What you've covered the Jets for a long, long time, and there's been a lot of futility. When you start covering the team, well, you joined the paper in '72. When you start covering the Jets, do you think it would be this long before they? Well, I mean, do you think this long would go without them winning the championship or even getting in the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, look, they came so close with Parcells in
Right.
'98.
Right.
They were up 10-0 at the half in Denver.
Right.
But did I think the Browns would never win a Super Bowl? No. Did I think the Lions would never win a Super Bowl? No. There's some long-suffering fans out there, not only Jets fans, but no. You would think that after all the times trying to find their franchise quarterback, they would find one, but they're still searching and they're hoping that Hackenberg is the guy, but they have no idea whether he is or not.
When are they?
And he was drafted ahead of Dak Prescott and Jacoby Brissett, for what it's worth.
But it's so funny, and I guess it's not funny to Jets fans, but how every team around them seems to get the right answer. The Patriots, they lose Brady with penalty. Then what's the name comes in, to play. Now Zach Prescott comes in. You're looking at Dallas, and and if you're a Jets fan, how come we never get the right answer? I mean, why do we we're always like a half step behind? Is that just like karma? Or is it like they're not getting the right? It's just bad luck, bad decision. I mean, what? Why?
Well, it's bad karma. It's bad drafting.
Right.
I mean, Chad Pennington looked like he had a chance, but he didn't have a big enough arm, and he had a durability question.
Right.
Ken O'Brien was picked ahead of Dan Marino.
That's the worst ever. I mean, Marino. Passing up on Marino, but a lot of teams did.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of teams did that here. That's right. But Vinny Testaverde almost, again with Parcells, he almost turned out to be the savior.
Right.
And Sanchez, don't forget.
And Sanchez, that's right, twice in the AFC Championship game. The third year of Sanchez, that's when Rex Ryan wanted to turn him loose, and when he turned him loose, everything fell apart. And it didn't help him. He didn't surround him with enough talent. They started making bad draft choices. They brought in Derek Mason and got rid of Jericho Cotchery, which was a mistake. So they didn't do Sanchez any favors, and Sanchez didn't do himself any favors. Right. Highlighted by the butt fumble. He'll forever be remembered by the butt fumble.
Right.
Well, you mentioned that this, as far as Bowles is concerned, you feel like he's safe unless they have a disaster of a season. But they're 1-3 now. They're at Pittsburgh. They're at, I think, Arizona after that.
Right.
I mean, they're going to be favored to be 1-5 after that. Then Revis is hurt again. Something happened with Revis today.
Yeah, hamstring.
Right. So things are pointing towards disaster.
Yeah, they are. But one thing I've learned about the NFL is you can't figure this league out. They're 1-3, but I mean the Cardinals are not exactly lighting things up either. They're 1-2 and entering today.
Right.
You just never know. I mean, who expected the Patriots to win their first 3?
Right.
It's a crazy league. I mean, would it shock me if the Jets went to Pittsburgh and beat them? No, it wouldn't. And you know what? They're probably better off going away at this point.
Right. Exactly.
Playing on the road.
Right.
So, you know, the Steelers got waxed
Yeah, they did.
last
Eagles.
week, right?
By the Eagles, yeah.
Yeah. So, before we get from 1-3 to 1-5,
Right.
let's see what happens. It wouldn't shock me if the Jets upset the Steelers.
Right. Do you still love what you're doing? You've been doing it for a long, long time, and here,
What else could I do?
Yeah, I know that's kind of the question.
I asked myself, what would I do if I didn't do this?
What would you want to do?
Nothing else. I mean, it's great. I get to wear jeans every day. I don't have to go into my office hardly at all, and I get to participate and mingle with this very unique fraternity that we have. It's not easy doing what we do, as you know, especially on deadline. But the guys I work with, it's just such a unique fraternity, and you know we all love sports. We all love to write. And look, there's some jerks in our business, without a doubt. But I wouldn't want to. If I had this would be the career. This would be the life that I would pick.
Right. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, I was just tell you talk to kids and they tell them, when you do something that you really love. I mean, you sometimes, you've been to some Olympics and Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff.
I never went to Olympics. Went to Olympics.
You didn't do? Oh, okay. Well, I'm putting you in an Olympics.
Oh, okay.
You're doing it. But whatever big events you've done, you're there and you're thinking, wow, man, I'm getting paid to do this stuff.
Wait a minute, you get paid?
Yeah, I know that. I actually.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't know you're supposed to get paid for this.
Yeah. Well,
How much is it for this appearance, by the way?
This is free. No, you get paid for everything else.
This is from the bottom of your heart.
Right. Now here we'll give you a set of big. Right. So could you get the pens out of the supply closet?
Wait a minute. You mean I don't get any money for this?
Like you were like a what about a screwdriver?
The drink.
I thought you had a better budget than that.
Well, we're working on this.
All right.
See, now I see why.
You're gonna help us with that budget, right? This appearance.
No, I don't. I think this will be your last show.
See, this is why Richard Todd said.
Yeah. Now you understand, right?
No, I mean, but Steve, man, some of the shit that would come out of Steve's mouth, man, he was very. I mean, he's in the past 10 years, you've been very tame. Maybe 5 years. But I mean, Steve was just really just just kind of out there. He'd say anything. He'd be the ones who would ask the questions. Then, you'd be in these tough press conferences.
I don't like asking questions in groups.
Right.
I prefer to do my one-on-one thing.
Right.
Because if I ask a question in the group, my question, which I think is a good question most of the time, will be on Twitter 3 seconds later.
Right.
So why should I help facilitate someone else's?
Exactly. Right. And you guys, and also, we're all competitive, but between the Post and the News, it was just such a hell of a competition that.
Oh, that made it fun.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right. And it can't be anything like that anywhere else besides New York. Like that competition between two papers.
It's pretty intense, but there's look. Boston has some.
Right.
You'd be surprised. I mean, the competition. It's all over the country, I think, but of course it's more intense here.
It is intensified. I was going to ask you, how has this? You survived so many eras. How is this digital era?
You say error?
Era.
I've survived so many errors.
Eras. Yeah. Well, we're not going to talk about errors, but eras. We joke. We have like sort of Steve and I had this running thing. Like we had these tape recorders. And we'd have like the old cassette tape recorder, and we'd say we're never going digital. So we'd show. Remember, we had like the little what was those square tape recorders?
Yep.
I forget who made those.
I forget too. But look, see.
Oh, were you not? But you're not digital.
What do you mean? That's digital.
Yeah, but we said we would never go digital. We always had those cassette.
But I think the reason I did because you abandoned me. I think you went digital before I did.
Oh, no, absolutely.
So once I saw that, I figured it's time.
But even this is like kind of like old school, right? This is kind of
digital.
But I used to bring like those big, like I figured it would tease me. I bet one of those big box tape recorders, like reel to reel tape recorders,
Yeah.
and you put it on the podium. It would take up the entire room.
Yeah, that was one of the things that separated you from the competition. You were the only one that had that.
Yeah, there are a lot of places. Although I must tell you, I always was into the whole digital thing. I mean, I always liked digital. I was like cameras.
Right, because you used to go to that electronics store in Manhattan. What was the name of that one?
B&H
B&H or
J&R.
J&R, whatever it was.
Yeah,
I went there.
I thought you had some stock in that because you were trying to direct me there one day. I
I
remember.
told you, I said,
Yeah.
Steve, this is it, man. This is the direction, But, like in podcast, do you have your own podcast yet?
No, I don't. Should I?
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be great.
Would I?
Oh, no, you'd absolutely be great. Trust you would be wonderful. And it's simple. I mean, it really is. You would be wonderful on
Well, I'm
on
going
a
to take
podcast.
pointers from you before I start my own.
Yeah, well, you could do it. It's really. I'm surprised the Post hasn't told you to do it.
Well,
You should ask. You should bring it up because
hold on. Let me get that on tape. I'll bring that to my editors.
Steve Serby needs his own podcast.
Well, that's very nice of you. I'll take that compliment from a legend like yourself. Absolutely.
A legend. That's always a kiss.
You
of
are
death,
a
by
legend.
the
You
way.
know that.
That's a kiss of death.
No, you are.
Yeah, we're all in the same area.
No.
I don't have a picture. Didn't I? But let me ask you a question. I don't want to bring up the Todd thing one by one. Wasn't there a picture of that? I remember seeing that picture of somehow nobody ever got a picture of that of him attacking you. There was a picture.
No, don't forget, it was 1981.
Right.
There were no cameras in the locker room at that time.
Mm.
If there were cameras in the locker room,
yeah.
he would have been in big trouble.
It would have been on video.
But that never. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And no video. Yeah, no
Yeah.
video, no
Right.
cameras.
Oh, he wouldn't
Yeah.
even.
Yeah, if
No,
it
that's
were
what I meant, no
today,
video, yeah.
he'd be on video.
Oh, he'd be.
That's like an assault charge.
Yeah, it would have been.
Well,
Yeah.
it should have been. I was just even thinking.
Now
how
we
do you
actually
get
the
away
post
with
the
that?
post actually filed charges, civil charges, but the DA at the time, a man named Dennis Dillon, ruled that I was not hurt badly enough. That's
Wow.
I believe that's what it
He
was.
was probably a season ticket holder, Jet season ticket holder.
Exactly.
But I decided I didn't want to pursue criminal charges because I wanted to go back to work.
Right.
So I was off work for 2 weeks, and I remember, though, how apprehensive and anxious I was going back into that locker room. Half the team would not talk to me.
Really?
Half the team, because Joe Klecko, who was very tight with Todd, led the pro-Todd faction. And ironically, Klecko and I are very tight today.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but back in 1981, he was loyal to his quarterback, which I understand, just as Brandon Marshall is loyal to his quarterback today. But I remember Lamb Jones would talk to me.
Okay.
I found it interesting that Lamb Jones and Wesley Walker, Todd's receivers,
Talk to
had
me.
no problem talking to me. I don't know what that meant. I think Gastineau must have talked to me.
Well, he's the one who almost. Not he didn't quite rescue
saved
you.
your life.
He
Yeah,
kinda,
well, he loved the publicity so much. I'm guessing he talked to me.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Half the team would talk to me, and half the team wouldn't.
I got to tell you, man,
For a little while, it didn't last long.
that was such a unique group. Yeah, I remember that my favorite time out of there was a strike. Remember the strike year? It was 87, was it? When they would practice out of the park out there.
Yeah.
That whole time was just so fascinating. And remember they brought in scab players, and the guys would be out there. It was at Hofstra, and they were like throwing rocks.
And eggs. I think eggs, too, weren't
Eggs,
they?
yeah, throwing eggs.
Yeah.
And stuff. It was fun. And it just seemed like some of the guys were just so disillusioned because I think for the first time, I think that's when it really hit them that they were really ultra replaceable. I mean, that they were thinking, like typical football players.
Well, that was 87 when the Giants, Parcells started out 0-3.
Yep.
Parcells was, I don't want to say mailing it in, but he had Lawrence Taylor playing tight end. And they were defending Super Bowl champs.
Right.
And that totally destroyed their season.
Right. Yeah, no, that was amazing. Let's see. Before in the couple of minutes we have left, what?
A couple of minutes. I'm good till midnight.
No,
what are you
no.
talking
Well,
about?
listen, man, they got to go.
What? Oh,
No, and we know you got to go too.
I have no life. I'll be here.
But how what you cover everything, not just the Jets, the Giants. You cover everything. What's do you have like a what's the most intriguing franchise? I mean, the Jets clearly are. I found the Jets always be more intriguing than the Giants, but the Giants are always there. I mean, they're solid. when you sort of rank the New York franchise in terms of intrigue, what are who are the most intriguing franchises to cover?
Wow, intriguing. Well, the Mets. I mean, the Mets have only won 2 championships in their history, and some strange things happened to the Mets. It's kind of in line with the Jets. I mean, Bobby Valentine with the mustache in the dugout, Piazza with the jagged bat thrown at him by Clemens, and Gooden and Strawberry. You know what happened? The dead end kids. What happened to them? And
that whole team, that '86 team, and even the way they won was spectacular.
Yeah.
Like the Game 6 in Boston.
Yep. Yeah. So I would have to say the Mets and.
What about the Knicks?
Yeah, well then.
I know that's another podcast.
Well, they haven't won.
They haven't won.
They haven't won
lifetime.
since '73, right? Since '73, yeah.
right.
Well, they've certainly had their share of coaches and turnover and GM, and yeah, the Knicks are right up there also. But Frederick Weiss.
Oh my God, that's right, Frederick Weiss. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
so you'd have to lump the Knicks and right below the Mets and the Jets, I would think.
Right. You know, the Nets have always been kind of interesting just because it's just been so hopeless. You know, they kind of flittering around and on the periphery. I mean, like permanently on the periphery. You know, and you try to get it, even when they moved to Brooklyn. It's okay. Well, we're kind of close. At least you're.
Do you know I used to cover the Islanders?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
but of course.
But they were winning. I mean, they were really
No,
winning.
no, they weren't good when I covered them. Of course. I covered the Mets that lose 103, the '93 Mets, and I covered the Islanders before they won their 4 cups.
Right. No.
I passed.
They took you out. They said, you know what? We're not going to give you a promotion now.
I passed the baton to Larry Brooks, who got to cover those 4 consecutive Stanley Cup champions. I mean, I covered Trottier when he was a rookie, Clark Gillies when he was a rookie, and then when it was time for the Islanders to get good, I was on to something else.
Right. You know, Steve is that's more hockey than we've. That's a record. Like we've talked about 5 minutes. That's a record. So
talking about hockey?
Yeah, 5 minutes. That's good.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
you know, we made a commitment this year that we're going to actually cover more hockey. We're going to actually go to games and do the whole thing because this is.
You know, it's funny. Hockey players are really good to deal with.
I know they are. They really are. They give you access.
Yeah, they're not pampered, right? I think that's the key. They're not pampered. They grew up on the ice at 4 or 5 years old, and for the most part, I mean, look during hockey games, they're interviewed between periods.
That's what I know, which is it's unbelievable. You know, I mean, could you imagine interviewing these guys? Were interviewing basketball players between, you know, well, even I think baseball players may be the worst. I think they may be the worst.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
in general, I've always found that to be true. Yep.
Yeah.
That's when you could find them, when they're not hiding in the players' lounge.
I know, and it's so scripted. I mean, it's like, some guys occasionally you come across somebody. I don't know who's your favorite interview is. I mean, who's sort of been your over the time
over the years?
Who've been your kind of real go-to people?
David Cohn.
David Cohn was good.
He's a good one.
Justin Tuck.
Tuck was good. Not Derek Jeter.
You know, but I mean, Jeter was boring as hell. But you know what? I'll give him credit. He was accessible.
Right.
I mean, he wouldn't say anything, but he'd always
he'd be there.
He'd be there. I did a number of Q&As with him, and they got progressively more boring as the years went on. He became more guarded and more guarded. But yeah, Mike Tyson I did a Q&A with. He was great.
Tyson's great.
Yeah, I sat down with dinner for him. He was a vegetarian. I don't know if he still is. He had for dinner, he had a boiled potato and a salad.
Wow.
Mike Tyson?
Wow.
What year was that?
But
that was before
I guess he
Holyfield?
went off ears
Right.
and became a vegetarian.
That's right. There's that Holyfield tape that kind of turned him around. Yeah, but I think boxers universally.
Louis Carnesecca, one of the all-time greats.
Come on,
yeah,
man. Louis is great.
Yeah,
Louis is great.
Jay Wright.
Jay Wright. No, I didn't cover Wright. I mean, actually, a little, but not a whole lot. I mean, Jamal actually had more.
Yeah, no, Wright's great.
I wrote a book with Lawrence Taylor. This is his second book.
What was that like?
Do you remember covering him?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What did Robbie? Remember Robbie? You'll burn in hell. Remember you'll burn in hell.
Robbie Jones.
Robbie Jones. You'll burn in hell if you follow Lawrence Taylor.
But Lawrence didn't like doing the media. He didn't do. But he was, when you got him, I would walk him out of the locker room, and he'll say, Serby, I'm not talking. I don't want to talk to you. I don't. And you just kept asking him questions, and eventually he started talking, and he was unbelievable.
Right.
He was a tremendous quote. So he's one of my all-time favorites.
LT.
Yeah.
All right. Now, just tell me about the books. You did the book.
I just did two. I just did the one with LT, and then I did a book with Brett Favre, his 1 year with the Jets. The publishing company thought it'd be, hey, might be a good idea, and it started out good, and then, of course, at the end, he totally collapsed.
Right.
His arm gave out, his body gave out, and whatever. They still published the book, but it was not what they thought it would be or what I thought it could be.
He was sending pictures and stuff.
He was. Was that?
In case you forgot.
Yeah, and I do remember that. Yeah.
Oh, boy, man, Brett Favre.
Yeah.
This is our guest. This the legendary Steve Serby of the New York Post. Author, journalist, and again, I started the show saying one of the most versatile journalists I've ever been around. Really, I mean, really versatile. And a great guy. Not, just very giving of time, as you see, doing this for free.
You have to remind me of that?
No.
Get my agent on the phone.
Oh man,
No,
Steve.
it's my honor and my privilege because you're a legend. Also, not also, you are a legend. I don't consider myself a legend, but
absolutely.
Bill Rhoden is a legend, and this podcast is going to be a smashing success.
What's your social? Do you do a lot of social media like Twitter and Facebook, stuff like that?
For a little bit, I dabble in it.
Yeah. Well, that's again. I think
I'm too busy listening to your podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you and the other hundreds of. No, we'll be optimistic. We're going to get this up to like the hundreds of thousands.
Right.
Okay. But seriously, you need to get a podcast, because it's number one. It's fun. It's fun, but you'd be really great, and you don't have to worry about any attacks. Let me ask you one thing.
I don't trust myself. I would probably.
You probably would get attacked.
Actually, because you could
probably
say,
by my producer.
You could say anything. I mean, you could say anything. You could actually have Richard on your shows. And let's kind of just make amends and all that.
Why don't you?
And just kill him.
I have an idea. Why don't you call Richard Todd?
I should.
You get him on your
That would actually be great. And then we'll phone him.
I think he's at Bear Stearns in Atlanta. I think. That's
you know
where
what?
he was.
I do that, and then what? Where
And
does
just
it go
tell
then?
him. Just send my regards.
At the very end. Oh, by the way.
At the very end.
See, right here, you'll have like what's the
surprise? We got a surprise for you.
Is it? We've got a Richard. We've got a secret guest on the line. See if you could recognize his voice.
Again, make sure it's at the end.
Hey man, Steve, thanks so much.
Hey, my
man.
pleasure. Thank you.
No, it's really a pleasure.
You do a great job as host, and these guys are great too.
Well, you got to hear. You listen to it first before you compliment Kevin Keating. Then you hear the sound.
Wait a minute. This was the rehearsal, wasn't it?
No, this is it.
Oh, this was the. I'm supposed to record this. I was saving my best stuff for the real thing.
Right. See, we got you on video. We got you on sound. Jamal. Now this you could compliment Jamal.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
What should I say? No, I did already. No, he did
Not
a great job.
Yeah.
He's a great sidekick, or how do you?
No, that's fine.
But you should really. I mean, it's tough to get a word in edgewise with him, isn't it?
That's what people tell me, but I haven't had that problem.
Oh, really? Is that what people
And you
say?
got a great voice.
Yeah.
Thank
He
you.
does. He does have a.
He
but
does.
Don't tell him that. But he does have a great radio
does.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more of him on this podcast.
Okay, our guest has been. Let's shut it down. Hey, Steve, thanks so much.
Hey, keep up the good work.
It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. Hello, everyone. We're back. Bill Rhoden on Sports here at beautiful MetLife Stadium, where the Jets took another one on the chin. And I'm here with, on the soundboard, Kevin Keating, video, Raisa Kelly, and, of course, Jamal Murphy sitting across from me. And, Seattle obviously has got a great team. And,
right.
We always talk about what athletes, do or don't do. But I had a very nice conversation after the game with Cliff Avril, who's a Seattle defensive end. He's got roots in Haiti, And recently, man, he's on a high because he recently completed a school in Haiti, in his community, in the community where his parents grew up. And we spoke, for a few minutes, but he was very, very excited, probably more excited about that. I'm sure he's pretty excited about the game.
Right, 3-1.
3-1, that's a lot of big. But he was also very happy about what he just accomplished and all that. So I talked with him. So here's our interview. Here's what he said. But how long was the planning process?
Honestly, it took about 7-8 months before I putting everything together and making sure everything was legit as far as for the people we were partnering up with. But it took about 7 months. It was last season where the opportunity presented itself, and we did it right in April.
How did it feel, man? Just to plan for something, then finally, because I think you were there, right?
Yes.
When? Just recently?
No. Well, in April we broke ground on the actual building, and then this past week, Jeanette, who's the main person at my foundation, I want to give her a title, and then my wife went as well.
So I was thinking, how does that feel, man? You've accomplished a lot in your life to do this, but how does it feel to actually see something like that actually come to fruition?
It's awesome. It's amazing to be in a situation where you can do that. Go back to where your parents are from, and be able to build a school. I think education is huge. If you're going to give somebody something, I think that's the biggest thing that you can give somebody. So to be able to do it and actually see it coming into play is a huge blessing and accomplishment.
What's the name of the school
Well, we were trying to get it named after myself, but how you say it again, Jeanette? LaShawn, the name of the school? That's the name of the school? Is that what the official name that we're going out there?
What's the name?
So it's in the Cliff Avril School. Is that what we're trying to get it changed to the Cliff Avril Family Foundation School, but we're in the process of trying to get it done. But it's in the community of LaShawn, Haiti.
Now, just briefly, you didn't grow up there. You were born here, but your parents were born in Haiti?
Yes, both my parents were born in Haiti. They came over in 84, 85, and I used to go every summer, actually, until my grandma passed away about 15 years ago. So, it's been a while since I've been back, but it's great to go back and visit and see what's going on.
It's just fine. I mean, we talked a lot about, in the last couple of years, athletes being in the news, either whether it's LeBron or Kaepernick, whatever. But I guess the point is that there's so much stuff that you can do, and a lot of guys are doing. You don't really hear about it a lot, but this is very powerful, and it's just a good thing.
It's unfortunate that, for the most part, if you're not a superstar and doing some positive things, you don't get any recognition. But at the same time, if it's the opposite, if you're doing some negative stuff out there, they're ready to blast it. It's unfortunate, but fortunately for me, I don't do it for the publicity. I do it because that's what we feel is right. That comes from the heart. And, if people catch wind, that's cool, but that's not why I'm doing it.
Finally, 10 years from now, what would you like to be happening with the school? Let's say 10 years from now.
10 years from now, I would like to have the first graduating class that came through and probably do something for those kids. I think that'd be huge. I plan on going every year, at least once, if not more times a year, to check on the kids, check on the school, and make sure everything's up to par. We provided uniforms, we provided school pencils and markers and all these different things, so we just want to make sure the school is up and running every year, and hopefully, 10 years from now, we can see some of the kids graduate.
Man, congratulations. Just for the record, just say your name and say your name, and let's say the name of the school, community. I'm Cliff Avril, Seattle Seahawks, and the name of the school.
Yeah, I'm Cliff Avril, defensive end for the Seattle Seahawks, and I just built my first school in LaShawn, Haiti, and I'm very excited and proud to be a part of it.
Hey, thanks so much. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
No, that was great, and it's a great way to end the show. Happy for him, and it's just, there are a lot of guys doing a lot of really good things.
Right, and you don't hear about it. I mean, that's impressive.
Right, yeah.
For anybody to do it, athlete, non-athlete, you get that accomplished. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So, that's it from here. I mean, I wish we could, they had better news for Jets fans, but it's great news for Seattle. Sorry, Jamal and Kevin.
Hey,
that's
man.
just the way it goes.
I think my fandom is deteriorating.
You're going to become a Giants fan?
Maybe I'll be Seattle. I'll be a true
Yeah,
bandwagon.
yeah, right. Yeah, just be blunt. Like, wow, you know, I like Seattle.
Whoever wins, it's like I have a nephew who's about 5 years old. Whoever wins, that's who he's.
That's
a fan
all
of.
for. Hey,
Smart kid.
this the American way. Hey, everybody! Hey, thank you so much. We got some good guests coming up. We got Kenny Anderson,
Right.
the legendary Kenny Anderson, coming up, and you know, you ran into Gayle King.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get her back
We're
up
try
here.
to get her back. That was a ball.
Right.
It was a riot, actually.
Right.
Get the great Gayle King back, and a lot more folks.
And of course, as always, follow us at BROSpod on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram's popping lately, so check that out. Any questions, comments on the show, email us brospod@gmail.com. That's BROSPOD@gmail.com. Follow our Facebook page, Bill Rhoden On Sports. And so we'll keep you up to date on everything that's happening, and there's big things popping here.
That's right. So Kelly, thank you for those beautiful images. Kevin, the great sound. Jamal Murphy, great energy. And we will see you guys. Well, I guess we kind of see you right now. Next week,
They'll see us.
they'll see us. Yeah, we won't see you, but, you know. All right. See you later. God bless.